All right. Good evening. I hope you're all doing well. Today we're learning Bava Metzia Daf Tzadi Test as well as Daf Kuf Amud Aleph. We'll be going until 6 lines from the bottom of Kuf Amud Aleph, and then of course on Shabbos Kuf Amud Beis and Kuf Yud Aleph. Kuf Yud Aleph is a Kuf Aleph, excuse me. Kuf Aleph Amud Beis is a Zaftig Daf. We'll get as far as we can. This coming week is going to be very choppy. I have a bunch of graduations, Baruch Hashem, and weddings, and I don't know what's going to happen, but I'll keep you posted as things progress. Are the graduations the week after?
Tuesday or Wednesday?
I don't even know what my schedule is. Well, I'd be pretty thrilled. We've done it at Teres Ayala. If it's in town, we should be Mekadesh Techol. There's a lot of Yidden.
At the graduation and the main stage.
Let's do it. We just need to clap and say, Daf Yomi. All right, so we're at a new Mishnah toward the bottom of Tzadi Chesed Beis. Let us jump in. Hashola Sapar. Let's say I'm borrowing a cow from you. The Shilchalo Biyad Beno. And says the Gemara that if you look in Rashi here, that the mashil, the lender, so I borrow from you, let's say Tex is going to be the mashil, the lender. He sends me the animal Biyad Beno. He sends it with his son, Biyad Avdo, his servant. It's exciting. You have a servant now. It's great. Biyad Shlucho, or he has a shaliach. Oh, Biyad Beno, Biyad Avdo, Biyad Shlucho shall shoel, or it's either the mashil sends it or the shoel sends it. And if during the shlichus, during the transfer of the animal from the mashal to the shoel, umesa, the animal dies, the love is pater, the shoel is pater, because he hasn't taken ownership yet over the animal, right? We're talking about who maintains responsibility until the package is received. We have this all the time with Amazon. It's not a halachic discussion per se, but let's say it was, when they're delivering that product. So I want them to deliver it. I don't really control their delivery. It just kind of shows up. So if they just did it on their own, they sent it with their own. They didn't ask me who they were sending it with. They sent it. So I'm pater from any damages that take place during that time. However, Amar lo hashol, let's reverse it. Let's say the shol said, Shilchali, send it to me, Mr. Mashil, text. Please send it to me, Biyad Midi, with my son, Biyad Avdi, Biyad Shluchi, O Biyad Bincha, Biyad Avdecha, O Biyad Shlucha. As long as the shoel is governing the conversation, and the transfer takes place, or another version that would be in this category, or Shamlo Hamashil, would you like me to send it to you? Hareni Mishal Chalach, Biyad Beni, Biyad Avdi, Biyad Shluchi, O Biyad Bincha, O Biyad Avdecha, O Biyad Shluchacha, B'amar Shol Shlach, send it, V'shilcha, Umesachai. So it's very, it's a super wordy Mishnah. But in short, as long as the shoel agrees that it's being sent to him and kind of initiated that it should be sent him or agreed to it from the mashil, then he's on the hook for anything that happens during the transfer. However, if nobody said boo, mashil just says, go bring this to Karish. Right? So Tex says to his son, go bring this to Karish. So that's not my problem. I have not yet accepted upon myself achrayas for your item.
Same concept we saw in Shliach HaKabbalah versus
Shliach HaHalacha.
Who side?
Yeah, there's more permutations, or I guess there's similar permutations, but
it's very similar.
It's very similar.
It's hers once her shliach grabs it if it's her shliach. But if the man sends it by shliach, it's nothing until it arrives to her.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing.
Very similar. Says the Mishnah at the end of the page, the same rules apply when the animal is being returned at the end of the loan period. Okay, so let's start with the Gemara at the top, because the Gemara starts out with the problem. The Gemara says, I don't understand. Biyad Avdo Chayiv. How can you say in the Seifa of the Mishnah that if the Mashil sends it with his Eved, that you're going to be Chayiv? After all, Yehei Eved Kiyad Rabo. If the Mashil is sending the animal with his Eved, and the Eved is Kiyad Rabo, then how could it be that the shoel would ever be chayiv in such a case? That doesn't make sense. So we have two answers here. Tzadi Testament Aleph top line, Amar Shmuel be'eved ivri de lo kani legufe. Oh, very good. So if you're talking about an eved ivri is lo kani legufe. The owner doesn't actually own the body of the eved because he's a yid. He has status. He has Jewish status. He has a chiyuv in mitzvos ki'isha. So then in those cases, says the Gemara, the Eved Ivri de lo kani legufe, perhaps that's what we're talking about, where it's chayav, because there by the Eved Ivri we don't say yad Eved ki yad Rabo, because he's a functioning separate individual. An Eved Kanani is Ke'ilu, the extension of the owner. So that's how Shmuel says that it's possible that it would be
So What's
still.
the kasha? What are we asking? Who's sending it?
Problem is that in the safe of our Mishnah, we said that if Tex sends me the animal, even with my permission, but he sends it with his Eved.
Who's text? The lender, the.
Tex is the mashil, he's the lender, I'm the borrower. So we don't live too far apart. He says to one of his kids, he says to his Eved, excuse me, go walk this to Kerish around the corner.
Right.
So he walks it to me. So the safe of our Mishnah said that if I, the Shoel, agree, so then during any damage that happens between Sherwin and Chase, I'm chayiv.
Okay.
The Gemara says, how is it that you're chayiv?
Okay.
It's still in the rishus of the ma'ashil because yad eved ki yad rab. The Gemara says perhaps we're talking about an eved ivri. Rav Amar in the third line of pilutim eved kanani. We could even say that you'd be chayiv even if we're talking about an eved kanani, even though in general we hold yad eved ki yad rabo. Why here is it different? Why here would we say that when the mashil, when Tex sends me the animal that I'd like to borrow through his Eved, and even if it's an Eved Kanani, that I would still be chayiv, Harei Yad Eved Ki Yad Rabo, says the Gemara, because Naseh Ke'omer Le, it says if he says to the Shoel, it's as if Tex says to me, Ikisha B'makel B'hitavo. It's as if I said to Tex, just give your animal a swift kick and he'll start walking in my direction. And once that happens, once he smacks the animal and starts walking, so then it's as if I've taken achrayas. Says the Gemara, that's not so pashut. Meisvei, we have a brisa. The brisa says, that here we distinguish the Eved from the son and the shliach. If it were to have been sent by Tex with his son or with his shliach, then I would be chayiv. However, biad abdo pater. But if it were to be sent by Tex's Eved, he's the mashil, I'm the shoel. So then I would be pater during that transfer time because yad eved ki yad rabo, and this is a problem. Bishlama l'Shmuel masnisin be'eved ivri brisa be'eved kanani. I could understand how Shmuel would have distinguished between our Mishnah, where we said it was an eved ivri, and the brisa, where it's considered to be an eved kanani, and it's yad eved ki yad rabo. That's why it says pater in the brisa. However, elul Rav kasha. But according to Rav, who says that we're still talking about an Eved Kinani, this doesn't make sense. Because there is this, it says you're pater, and here we don't say Naseh Ke'omer Le, he kisha b'makel b'hitavo. So, Kasha and Rav. Zog the Gemara, 10 lines down, not even. Amar lach Rav, lo tema, Naaseh Ke'omer Le. The Gemara says we don't have a halachic assumption that it's as if I said to Tex, just give your animal a kick, which is code word for send it with your Eved and I'll take achrayas. Ella, it was not Naseh. It was actually, like he said, Ella Ema be'omar lehi kisha b'makel b'tavo. It was actually where he said the words, please, you hereby have permission to send it with your goyish Eved, no problem. Right? We actually have these scenarios in my house. We have a non-Jewish woman who helps in our house. And she is bringing stuff from our house to neighbors' houses. Go get some eggs, please. Can you please return this to the neighbors? What happens if there's damages? It's mamish, this case. What happens if there's damages along the way? So if I say nothing, then it's yad eved ki yad rabo, and that's me. That's me. I'm achroi. Yeah, but she's an extension of me. She's batel to me. Whatever she does is my responsibility. B'chol minei drachim, it's on me. But if she were to have been a yid, right, a Jewish, but we used to have a Jewish babysitter. So then she's her own person. So then that's not the case anymore. And there's a Mari Makom that shows this idea as well, that it was actually explicit. De Itmar. I say to Tex, Hashileni paroscha, please lend me your cow. Amar le biad me. And then Tex says, Phil, how would you like me to get the animal to your house? Amar le, I say to him, Kisha b'makil v'tov. Just whatever, send it however you want. The second you send it in my direction, I'll take achrayas for it. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rav Barahu, Amar Rav Kevan sheyotzes mirshus mashil u'meisachai. The moment that animal leaves Tex's rishus and is walking toward me, I am now the responsible party. If it gets hit by a car in Albany between Sherwin and Chase from Texas house to mine, I, the shoel, am achroi. When I say to Tex, Yikish b'makel v'tavo, that's me saying, I don't care how you get it to me.
Even though it might be his,
It'll be his Eved Kanani. Yeah, because once I grant permission for him to send it in that way, that's enough. Yad Eved, let's say it in Lumdus. Yad Eved Kiyad Rabo is only true until I forego on Yad Eved Kiyad Rabo.
Even though it's his.
It's his Eved and it's his Eved Kanani and Gufo Kani. So Afal Pikein, we would still say that I would still be chayiv because once I give him rishus to send with his goyish person, so then I'm on the hook and he's off the hook. Nema Misayele, says the Gemara, perhaps we have therefore a raya for Shitas Rav, that we actually have to say Kisha b'makel. How so? So this is a brisa. Hashileni parascha. I say to text, lend me your cow, v'amar le biadmi, and he says, okay, but how do you want me to get it to you? V'amar le, I say to text, Kisha b'makel v'hitavo, kevin shiatzis merishus mashal l'meisachayim. So here we see a black on white proof for the Shita of Rav, and therefore Kasha on Shmuel, because this is exactly what Rav said. It's a goy. He kisha b'makil b'tavo. The second I say to text, I don't really care how you get it to me. The second you kick it out of your house, I'll take achrayis for it. Goy, Jew, it doesn't matter. I take achrayis for it. So says the Gemara, no, this brisa is not a raya for the Shita of Rav. Why not? Amar Rav Ashi hacha b'mayaskinan kegon shahaisa chatzera shel shoel lifnim mechatzera shel mashil. Oh, so the Gemara creates a new kimta. You can imagine that there's two fields. There's a field that that's the field in the back. So let's say I'm the back of the field and my arms are the front of the field. And the only way to get to my field is through your field. So I'm boxed in all the way. The only entry and exit is through a doorway that leads into your field. Your field is in front of my field. So if I'm the mashil and the animal's over here, and I say, go to Phil's field, the second it walks through, it's going into my field. There's only one path to walk. There's no other exits. So the Gemara says that that's perhaps what we're dealing with and why it's not a raya for Rav at all. Maybe it's not a regular case where it's going from Sherwin, where it can turn right, it can go straight, or it can turn left, and there's two alleys along the way. No, perhaps we're talking about a case where there's only one way to go. Because when text sends the animal in my direction, halfway down on Tzadi Testament Aleph, the animal has no choice but to go in one direction. There's nothing else to do. So that's why perhaps the Gemara says that in such a case, that brisa would sounds like Rav, but it would be true according to anyone. Says the Gemara, if that's true, if the Ukimta is that the Mashil's field can only be entered and exited through the Shoel's field, and therefore the animal only has one place to go, my the Memra. I don't need a brisa for that. Pashut that I the Shoel would be chayiv in such a case. No, there are gazyasam. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi is 2/3 of the way down. Dibra Masfil the Ika Gazyasa. Sheyesh b'chatzer mashil in the deeper field, the one that's owned by the mashil. There's zavios, ve'uktzin. There's corners. There's places to hide. Sheyechola lasur sham ulihi shamed b'mechave. He can go hide over there. So that's why the Gemara says that we needed the brisa. The brisa is not a regular case from Texas house to my house. You're right that the animal can only go from my rishus to Texas, from Texas rishus to my rishus, but there are some little corners it can hide. It's not a regular case, but that's why we needed that case. Mao de Tema, perhaps we would have said that because there's gaziasa, there are these little cutouts in Texas field, and therefore lo samchadaite, I, the Shoel, don't have in mind to be kona that animal. So, but I might have thought Dilma Kai Mahasam, because it's going to stay in his yard hiding. Below Asya Azal Hedja, and it wouldn't come to my field. Kamashmalan to Samchadaite, we assume that because, yes, there's little places to hide, but Lamais, he's not going into public. The only way he can really move, he can hide in Texas field, or he can come into my field. So halachically, we assume that even though there's places for him to hide, we assume, therefore, he will come into my field, and that is, therefore, a kinyan. So, we have a machlokas as to whether or not our case in our Mishnah was dealing with an Eved Kanani exclusively, like Rav, or perhaps we distinguish between our Mishnah and the Brisa, like Shmuel did, between one case being an Eved Ibri and one case being an Eved Kanani. Had it been according to Shmuel that it was an Eved Kanani, we would have said Yad Eved Kiyad Rabo, and had it been that it was a Yid, we would have said, no, that person's going to be Chayiv, the Shal will be Chayiv. The Gemara, about 2/3 of the way down on Tzadi Testament Aleph, begins a connected sugya, but not directly related. Amar Rav Huna, Hashol Kardo Mechavero. So I borrow an axe from Rabbi Sandberg over here. That's what he does on his free time. He's an axe thrower. And I say, please, can I borrow? And he says, sure. So then there's a very weird line. Bakabo, once I, the Shoel, use the axe, I do something with the axe, that's baka, I cut something with an axe, kina'o, then the kinyan is made. However, lo bakabo, but if I, the Shoel, never did the baka, I never hit anything with the axe, I'm holding it still, it's in my rishos, but I never hit anything with the axe. Lo kanal. Says the Gemara, lemai, what are you talking about? That's in my rishus. But apparently the Kenyan's not made. So you're making the facial expressions that the Gemara has in words. Lemai, what exactly are you talking about? If you want to say ilema le'onsin, that the shoal should now be chayiv, I don't need to wait for the shoal to hack anything with the axe to be chayiv and onsin. I'm a borrower, I'm a shoal. Shoal is chayiv and everything. It says the Gemara, Maishna para dimisha sheila. I don't end up like any cow. You're chayiv misha sheila. Why is an axe any different? It says the Gemara, mechudesh dekadin. The Gemara says 2/3 of the way down, 3/4 of the way down. We're not talking about the shoal at all. We're talking about the ability of the mashil to go back on the loan. Oh, so what's going on over here? So I say to Rabbi Sandberg, can I please have an axe? He says, sure, no problem. So I take it into my rishus. It's late at night. I'm not going out in the field and cutting wood. I put the axe in a safe place in my house. In the morning, he comes back to me and says, I want to take my axe back. I want to interrupt the loan. So says the Gemara, it depends. Bakabo lo matzi hadar be mashil. If I had already woken up early, the early bird gets the worm, I'm sitting there like all those videos of the lumberjacks who take the axe and break the logs into quarters. I already started my day. Once I started, lo matzi hadar be mashil. Rabbi Sandberg is not allowed to come to me and say, I want it back. No, now you have to wait till the terms of the loan are over, 30 days, whatever we decide. But lo bakabo, if I was late, I did the 9 o'clock chakras, you knocked on my door at 8:30, I haven't picked up the axe yet. So then, matzi mashal hadarbe, then the mashal is allowed to go back on the loan. Now this, in Lumdus, is a very unique idea. On the one hand, I, as the shoel, am perfectly chayiv and onsin if something happens. At the same time, you as the mashil have not totally given me that item, because as long as I have not used your item, you can take it back and break the terms of the she'ela.
Or apply this is only
We'll see in a minute that that's not the assumption.
idea, right? Milvalone suddenly is that I'm supposed to go invest it or
Correct.
whatever I'm gonna do with it. So I take it from you late at night and I put it in my drawer and come in the morning before I did anything, can you back out of your loan?
See, I'm just talking and learning, but there you might be stuck because of the halachic assumption of mevalot tzanit. It could be
Right,
that there's
but, and it's, to be both and now.
yeah,
but
but
since I didn't
that's
do
a
it,
little
I'll-
different. Again, I don't know, this is not,
I'm
the-
asking.
yeah, the
I don't-
question is milva lehotza nitna a halachic assumption ad kidei kach that we don't have to wait for you to act in
I
order,
agree.
I don't know, that's what I don't know, I hear what you're saying. So that's the chiddush of the Gemara, and it's a very big chiddush because it's a huge split in responsibility between the shol and the mashal. Shol's 100% on the hook, the mashal's not. It's very odd. It's very odd. So the Gemara says, don't worry, there's people who argue against this. Upliga the Rav Ami. The Amar Rav Ami, Hamashil Kardom Shel Hektish. So let's say that someone lent out an axe that belongs to Hektish. So then the Mashil who lent it out is Ma'al, no matter what, even before an action takes place, Lifi Tovas Hanoshabo. Because when I lend you something, you kind of owe me one, right? You got to be careful of ribbis. But there's like a feeling of reciprocity that exists. You got to be careful. So the Gemara says, what are we missing here? No action has taken place. Okay. Not only that, and not only that, I get me'ila as the mashil because I did something I shouldn't have done. I lent out on the gizbar. I lent out something from hektish without rishus. So I get me'ila, and you are allowed to be bokeh lechatchila. So this is very odd. It's odd for a couple of reasons. But this last end is very weird. If this item belongs to hektish, and you now know that it belongs to hektish because the mashil is chayv me'ila, why are you, the shoel, allowed to use the axe? It's hektish. So some of the Rishonim are done in the following way. Yes, you're using the axe, but the axe isn't changing. The axe it's causing other things to change, but the axe isn't changing. It's not like money that you use. You're passing it out. You're giving it. You'll never see it again. The same axe that I borrowed is the axe that I'm returning. And because of that, chavero is mutar levakebo lechatchila. The hana that the mashil created was tovas hana. It was an emotional hana that you, the shoel, now owe me something. But the chavero, who I lent to the shoel, he's allowed to use the axe because the axe isn't really being used itself.
There is a shtick or,
depreciation. It's not mentioned.
It's gonna have to be.
It's not mentioned in the Gemara.
It must be that it's minimal or you'd never be allowed to borrow next. If I'm not returning to you what you lent.
Say the same thing.
Oh, no, but it's, we assumed that even
I
a couple of
agree.
days ago,
It does get a little dull, but
Yeah.
it must be that it's you,
Is the same thing.
otherwise how do I ever borrow it?
it's the small forms of Mesa Machmas Malacha that you're putter on. It's a minor depreciation. And Allah.
Negligible.
Weight, it loses metal
Yeah.
over time,
Right.
but that, it's a long time for, I mean, I guess it depends on how used it is, but.
Whatever the depreciation is, it's halachically irrelevant.
Right.
And that's why we allow the Chavero to use it. But the Gemara anyways is bothered by this for other reasons. The ilo kina'o, 6-7 lines from the bottom. If the Mashiach alone wasn't enough, meaning if you needed to be Bokeah first, Amayma. What Me'ila was there? If in the previous case, we required the Bakabo to create a finality for the Mashal that he can no longer retract, over here, there was no Bakabo, yet Me'ila took place. How did that happen? If really the original Shita is right, and the Mashal needs not only to give out the loan, but also the other person to use the item to finalize the loan. Here, nobody used the axe. So the Gemara says, no one should be able to use this axe. It belongs to Hektish in its entirety. Even if Mashiach was done, but if what you're saying is that Mashiach plus Bakabo, it creates a She'ela, that didn't happen here. So therefore, Nehadra, you should return it. Below Likni, don't make a Kenyan below Lima. I just the whole thing is Verav Sinigra. So we see very clearly that Rav Ami disagrees with the presentation of the Gemara that we saw earlier in the name of Rav Huna. Rav Huna wanted to say that from the perspective of the Mashil, you need both to lend it out and for the Shoel to do an act. But according to the next Shita, according to Rav Ami, that's not true. Mashiach alone is considered a Kenyan for the Mashil. But again, the Lumdus is fascinating by Rav Huna, that we have this bifurcation between the Shoel where it's a done deal and by the Mashal where it's not a done deal. So it's not like Sober Sa'ozen. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel right that we have this dissonance between the two people. Not only that, says the Gemara, Upliga de Rebbe Lazar. There's other people who also disagree. Damar Rebbe Lazar, Kederach shetiknu Mashiach b'le kuchos, kach tiknu Mashiach b'shomrim. Regular kinyanim. Mashiach, and then you're done. That's it. We don't have to wait for Bakabo, for the Mashal, nothing. It's over. Clean and good, regular. And Tanya Nami Hachi, we have a brisa that supports this idea as well, namely that we disagree with Rav Huna, and that we agree with Rav Ami, but in particular we agree with Rebbe Lazar because of the language that we're saying, which is Kishem shetiknu Mashiach belekuchos kach tiknu Mashiach b'shomrim. That when we talk about a loan, all that's needed is the Kinyan Mashiach, and then the loan is finalized, not only for the Shoel, but for the Mashil as well. And therefore, whereas Rav Huna would have allowed the Mashil to be choser on the transaction until the time that the Shoel does an action, Rebbe Lazar, preceded by the Brisa, Rebbe Lazar says, no dice. The second the Mashiach is done, the Shoel, the Mashil is done. So again, the Chiddush is Rav Huna, and he's knocked out of the water here. Now we have our answer already, but the Brisa still continues. Uchashem, turning to the top of Tzadi Testament base, Shekarka niknes bekesef b'shtar ubechazaka, and just like ground, land is purchased with money, with contracts, and with making a chazaka, kach schirus, so too by rentals, the same thing is true, that nikne bekesef ub'shtar ubechazaka. Says the Gemara, what do you mean schirus if you're renting something? Maya vidate. What Rashi highlights what the question is. What type of chazaka are you talking about? What kind of chazaka? But it's metaltalin. What are you talking about? The Gemara says it's not metaltalin. Amar Rav Chizda, schirus karka. Okay, fine. That's a little bit of a side. All right. Next, Tzadi Testament base 4 lines down. Another sugya. Amar Shmuel, Haiman de gazel chavitza de tamrem mechavero. I steal from you a bundle of dates. The isbe chamishim tamre. There were exactly 50 dates in the pack. Agav hadade mizdaben benun nechichada. Had they all been sold as one, they would have had a 1-unit discount. I would have been able to sell them for the price of 49. They're 50, but you get a discount. It's a baker's dozen, right? You get a little bit of a discount. It's the reverse of a baker. It's actually not really. Baker's dozen's a bad example because you're not getting another date. You're just getting $1 less, right? So it's sorry. However,
It is the same.
it's not the same thing.
Because the one buys it. give the extra,
The-
right?
the
Just like the
opposite
baker
end.
doesn't.
The
The
opposite end.
baker is giving away an extra one.
Yeah, you're right. Financially, it's that I'm collecting less instead of giving you more.
Oh, I see.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah, financially, I'm not.
Got it.
Yeah, you're paying 49 for 50. I took off $1. You bought 12, but I gave you another. Whatever. I don't know if it might be a difference. What is it? A distinct difference without a distinction, or whatever the phrase is. Don't know. So if I sell them all at one time, it's nun nechichada. It's 50 minus 1, 49. But if I sell them chada chada, Pasha, that's a much better way to make money, and therefore mizdabin benun. So it says the Gemara. Let's analyze this. Lehedyot, if the person stole the 50 dates from a regular guy, b'shalim chamishim nechichada, then the ganav has to pay 49. But lehektish, and all of this is the sheet of Shmuel. We're going to be analyzing this. If I sold it from hektish b'shalim chamishim, I not only have to pay 50 as opposed to 49, but as well v'chum shayhu, I also have to pay a chomesh, right? I also have to pay a fifth, which is 10. So you're paying 60. Masha'ein kain b'mazik, as an aside, if I damaged it to lo mashalim chumsha, when we're dealing with this particular case of hektish, of a ganav who steals from hektish, or in this case a mazik who steals from hektish, there is no chomesh to amar mar. This is mamish, an ancillary note that ish ki yochal kodesh prat lemazik. If I damage it, then there's no chomesh. Fine. Now that's the din, is that by a hedyot we make a distinction between a hedyot and hektish. If the ganav steals from a hedyot, he has to pay only 49. But if a ganav steals from hektish, he has to pay 50. So it says the Gemara 12 lines down. Maskif la Rabibi bar Abaye. I don't understand. The hedyot, amay mishalim chamishim nechichada. Why, if the theft was from a hedyot, would he only pay 49? The guy could easily argue, the owner could argue, Neimale anachadachada hava mizavnina luhu. How do you know how I was planning to sell them? I wasn't selling them as a unit. You can't only compensate me 49. That I was going to sell it the way that you thought that I was going to sell it, selling them as a big unit. No, I want to make a mint. I'm going to package each one individually. It's going to be an amazing sale. So it's going to be great. So Amar Rav Huna b'rei Rav Yoshua. No, we don't do that. We don't make that halachic argument of I was planning on selling chada chada. We do say 49, and we always assume that you're selling them as a unit. This is a halacha that we learned from a Gemara in Bava Kama a while back, about 100 blot ago, more, about 160 blot ago. Shaman beisa be'osa sadatna. And we're not going to go into the details here, but basically when we assess a collection of food, we assess it as it relates to the whole of the field. So as it relates to the whole of the field, it's 50 dates. Because that's what's it. We're not discussing the discount. No, we assess it relative to the field. And relative to the field, it's 50 days. Fine. So it says the Gemara, Lememra, there's a weird implication that takes place over here. The Savar Shmuel, din hedyot lav kedin gvoadami. Toward the top of the page, when we started with this case, we noted that Shmuel said that when the ganav is caught, he has to pay back 49 if he stole from a hedyot, and 50 if he stole from hektish. So that means he clearly distinguishes between hedyot and hektish. But v'hatznan, we have a Mishnah that seems to not say that way. And this is halfway down on Sadi Testament base. Not al even okor mi hektish. If somebody takes a stone or a beam from hektish, the taking alone lo ma'al. Nosna lechavero. If I take it and I give it to Stan, so then hu ma'al, I who took it stole. V'chavero lo ma'al. Stan does not do me. I did something wrong. V'na'a besoch beso. If I built it into my house, this hektish beam, lo ma'al, there's no me'ila yet, even though I used it, ad she yidor tachteh b'shvei pruta, until I've lived in the house where my benefit of the beam is worth a shvei pruta. I'm just making this up. My mortgage is $3,000 a month. We divide, it's $100 a day, and 5 cents is 2 minutes. Whatever. So however we do the math, again, that's probably not how we would do the math, but however, I'm just using a lashon b'nei adam. The second you've lived there for long enough, you're done. That's when you're chayav on me'ila. Now, that's the end of the Mishnah. Let's see why Shmuel doesn't fit with this Mishnah. V'yaseh Rabbi Abahu kamed Rabbi Yochanan. Rabbi Abahu was sitting in front of Rabbi Yochanan. V'yaseh v'ka'amar mishmei de Shmuel. And they were talking about a shita of Shmuel. What did Shmuel say based on this Mishnah? Zoso meres. From this Mishnah about me'ila, we can learn something about something that's not me'ila related. We see that Shmuel made a tzushtel from the world of Me'ilah to a world of regular Bailim. That means that Shmuel equates Hedyot and Hektish. But earlier on the page, he said, no, they're different. By Hedyot, you have to pay back 49. And by Hektish, you have to pay back 50. So the Gemara shows that because Shmuel was able to make a tzushtel from the world of Hektish to the world of Hedyot, and they were perfectly even, so now we have a stira between the Shmuels. They don't all work. Beautiful question. The Gemara says 3/4 of the way down, 10 lines from the bottom. Low. Oh, nope, that's not true. A little bit higher. By the parentheses, says the Gemara, Hadar be Shmuel mehahi. Wow. The question was so strong, such a beautiful question, that the Gemara says that his Zosa Meris line, he backed down from that. Really, Shmuel holds there is a difference between Hedyot and Hektish, like we saw at the top of the page, and he's reneged on his new shita that he can make a diuk from the world of Hektish to the world of Hedyot. You cannot make that diuk. That he's going back on his din of the Zosomeres. Dilma meha hadar. Maybe he's going back on the din at the top of the page where he said that by a Hedyot it's 49 and by Hektish it's 50. How do you know which one it is? Says the Gemara, lo, me'ahi hadar be. He's going back on the Zosomeres line. Kidder Rava. What did Rava say? This is very deep, and we don't have time to really parse this out because I still have another Amud to learn. Da'amar Rava, Hektish Shalomidas, Kehedyot Midas Dami. Oh. Namely, there are equivalences between the world of Hektish and Hedyot, but it's not apples to apples. It's not Hektish Midas is like Hedyot Midas. Hektish Shalomidas is like Hedyot Midas. Maybe Shmuel agrees to that alignment. But if you say it's Hektish Midas to Hedyot Midas, then the Hektish is a higher level. So that's how we kind of answer up this question, and we say that there is still a difference between the two. Amar Rava story. Panish Gulai, there were some people who were carrying barrels, to Tavru Chavisa Dechamer Lechenva, that they broke a barrel of wine of a store owner, and they had to pay back for the barrel of wine. But how much do we have to pay back? Do I have to pay back cash? Can I just replace with another barrel? The Gemara says 8 lines from the bottom, B'yoma deshuka, if it's on the day of the marketplace where the chenva, where the store owner is able to sell, so mizdavna behe, then really he would have sold for 5. Bishar yome mizdavna be'arba. And on regular days, not shuk days, then he would have sold for 4. Ahadrule b'yoma deshuka, if the people who broke it are paying back on the day of the shuk, nahadrule chavisa dechamra. Well, then I don't have to give you 5 shekel, 5 zuz, whatever. All I have to do is give you a barrel. Because your goal is to sell the barrel of wine. I broke your barrel. Here's a new barrel. It's the shuk is open. Take my barrel. That's a perfect replacement. No problem. The shar yomim mahadru lehe. But on the other days, you have to pay back 5. The barrel is not helpful. Vilo Amron, when is this true? Elodelo havale chamer lizvune. The only time we say that this is true is when the owner didn't have wine to sell, and that's why you have to give him a barrel. But if the owner did have barrels to sell, you can't force him to give back a barrel because you have enough barrels to sell without this guy. He'll pay you back another time. Barrel or not, doesn't matter. However, when the people who broke it pay back a barrel to the chenvani, he gets to reduce from it the amount of tircha that he would have put into it, filling the barrel, sealing the barrel, and as well, udmei bar ziniyasa, and the cost it costs to put in the spigot. There's a machlokas rishonim over here about what the word is. Is it bar ziniyasa? Rashi has another gears of kar ziniyasa. Ayin sham Rashi, no time. That brings us to the top of Kuf Hamad Aleph. We're going to be heading to the bottom of the page. 9 minutes, and Mirza Hashem will make it. Let's say you and I are in business together, Kuf Hamad Aleph, top line at the Mishnah, Machlik Par Bechamor B'Yalda. You and I are trading animals. While we're trading animals in the house, one of the animals gives birth in the barn. V'chein hamocher shivchaso v'yalda. And let's say we're doing the same thing with a shivcha. While we're talking in the house, she gives birth in her living quarters. Ze omer, when the claim is, ad shalom macharti, v'ze omer misha lakachti, yachloku. I say, no, it's all in my favor. I'm the purchaser. Obviously, it happened once I purchased. And you say, well, come on, it was not that way. She gave birth before the deal was over. Yachloku. Hayulo beis avadim echad gadol v'echad katan. Let's say that there were 2 avadim, one tall, one small. V'chein beisados achas gadol v'achas katan. A field, one large, one small. No idea which ones were which. which ones were sold. Halokech omer gadol lakachti. The buyer says, I bought the big one. V'hala amar eni yodea. So that's bari b'shema. Zacha b'gadol. So in that case, the person, the lokech, gets to keep the larger field because it's bari b'shema, bari adif. Next, hamocher omer katan macharti. If the seller says, I sold the small one, v'hala omer eni yodea. This is the reverse. Last time the lokech was the bari. Now the bari is the mocher. Ein lo ela katan, bari b'shema bari adif, and the bari claim was on the katan. Ze omer gadol v'ze omer katan. If they don't have, they're both bari claims. One's gadol, one's katan. Yishava hamocher she'akatan mocher. Then we allow the mocher to make a shvua that he sold the small one. If he's willing to make that shvua, that's a raya brura that he actually sold the small one, and that's the one that we'll give to the mocher. Ze omer eni yodea, ze omer eni yodea. Pashut, that's a case of yachloku. Says the Gemara. Let's go back to the Resha. In the case of the Resha, where you and I traded machlif par b'chamor, or we're talking about a shivcha, and the animal or the shivcha gives birth without us knowing during the time of our transaction. Let's see where the animal is. Wherever that should be a chazaka of sort, that the animal, oh, it's still in the seller's house. Okay, then the child belongs to the seller. Why don't we employ regular rules over here? There should be a chazaka wherever the shivcha is. That's where the shivcha is, and then the child belongs to the seller. And then the other guy, why are we saying yachloku? So says the Gemara, Amar Avchia bar Avin, Amar Shmuel, you're right. Had it been that this person was in a location that belonged to the seller, I agree with you. But in this case, Be'omedes be'agam, where the animal was standing in a public place, where there was no chazaka, or shivchanami dekaima besimta. She gave birth in an alley. That's literally what a simta is. It just means that she's not in her actual living quarters. She gave birth somewhere else, a hospital, whatever it is. The nukma chezkas temara kama. Fine, even if they're in the wrong place, why don't we have a chazaka of the mocher, even if it's not in the mocher's rishus, but that was the previous owner. Why are we? It's very weird. We should have a starting chazaka, either location. If location doesn't work, it should still be the case that we should follow the original owner, and then the other person is in the category of motz mechaber al varaya. So says the Gemara, Hamani, very lumdish. Sumchusidam Ramaman Amotel b'Savek Cholken. The words below Shvuah don't belong in the Gemara according to the Defosim Yeshanim. It's Maman Amotel b'Savek Cholken. So this is really what again. I wish we had a lot more time. We don't. But look at what Simchas just did. We would have said Hamotzi Mechaber Levaraya. This would have been a typical case, and Tanaim hold that way. We have a machlokas Tanaim. Is this a case of Hamotzi Mechavero all of Araya because of the chazaka that you were the mocher and therefore you have one leg up on me, or no? Is it still Maman Hamutal b'Safek Cholken? Machlokas Tanaim, which is fascinating machlokas. That means that Sumchus is ignoring the chazaka of the mocher.
That is the sheet of Sumchus.
That is a sheet of Sumchus. So it's just interesting because he's overriding an otherwise reasonable chazaka. That's it. He's saying it ki'ilu, it's like a categorical shita. Doesn't matter what's going on. We ignore all the chazakas, and maman amotel b'safek is cholken no matter what. So now the Gemara tries to dig into the sheet of Sumchus. Eimar da'amar Sumchus b'shema b'shema. Maybe the rule of Sumchus and maman amotel b'safek cholken is only true with two shema claims, Eini Yodea and Eini Yodea. But bibari, mi amar. Would we say Maman Amotel b'Savek Cholkin like in the Reish of our Mishnah? In the Reish of our Mishnah, one guy said Ad Shalom Acharti, the birth was before I sold it, and the other guy said Mishal Akachti. There's no Shema claims over there. These guys are both, they're both, one of them's a liar, but they're not like unsure of themselves. They're saying what they think is true. Amaraba Barapuna yes. Amri Sumchos Hafila Bebari. Yes, we extend the din of Maman Amotel b'Safek not just to a case of Shema v'Shema, but even to a case of Bari Bebari. Rava Amar no. La'olam ki Amar Sumchos Shema v'Shema. About Bari Bebari lo Amar. He would not say it in the case of Bari Bebari, and therefore, in the Reish of our Mishnah, everyone would agree that it's Yachloku. No Machlokas in that case. So that would be the Gemara's fascinating answer. The Reish of our Mishnah, which is Bari Bebari, is no Machlokas. Even Sumchos would agree. The Seif of our Mishnah, which is Shema v'Shema, is Machlokas Tanaim. Everybody against Sumchos. Then the Gemara says, Utani, what really should be taught in our Mishnah, we'll look at this line while we look at the second line of the page. Ze Omer Shema Ad Shalom Acharti. Says the Gemara, that's what our Mishnah should say on line 2. Ze Omer Shema, perhaps. The Gemara Mamish changes the case to be Shema v'Shema to align with Sumchus. Ze Omer Shema Ad Shalom Acharti, Ze Omer Shema Mishal Akachti. So now we have a Mishnah. Zemar eni yodev, zemar eni yodea. We said in the end of our Mishnah, the case of Shema v'Shema, we said Yachloku. So the Gemara says, Bishlama Rava, midaseifa Shema v'Shema, Reisha nami Shema v'Shema. Rava touched up the Reisha to say that they're both Shema v'Shema, I understand. Ela l'Rava bar Avuna, the Amar in, Amar Sumchus afilu b'bari b'bari. According to the Shita, that Sumchus applies the rule of Mammon multiple sabek cholkin, even in a case of bari v'bari. Hashta b'bari v'bari Amar Yachloku. The Reisha was a case of bari v'bari. Now you need to teach me that he's going to apply this in a case of Shema v'Shema mibaya? It's Kal v'chomer. If you tell me that Sumchus holds that Mammon Amuto Savachol can apply by Bari Bari, then I don't need you to tell me in a case of Shema v'Shema, which is a suffix itself. Mammon Amuto Savachol can. Why did you teach me the Seifa? So the Gemara says we needed it. Imishumha, if that's your argument, low area, bad argument, because Tana Seifa legluye reisha. The reason why we had the Seifa, which was Eni Yodea, a double Shema, we needed that to reveal the Reisha. What was our concern? Shelo Tomar Reisha Shema v'Shema. Aval bebari lo. Therefore, Tani Seifa Shema v'Shema. I might have thought that the Reisha was Shema v'Shema because there's two ways to learn it. And I might have thought that bebari, he doesn't say that. Therefore, we added another case in the end. Tani Seifa v'Shema v'Shema. Michlal de Reisha bebari v'afilu hachiach loku. Very good. And the last question for the day, Tanan, the Mishnah says, Ze Omer Gadol, Ze Omer Katan, Yishava HaMocher Shekatan Mocher. Bishlam ala Rav Vada Amar Ki Amar Sumcha Shema v'Shema. Here too, we have the same problem. I could understand it in the case of Shema v'Shema that Sumchus would hold Mammon Amat V'Savei Chol Ken Aval B'Bari B'Bari Lo Amar Mishum Hachi Yishava. This, if it's Bari B'Bari, I understand. If Sumchus says that even in a case of Bari, if Sumchus says, that by Bari B'Bari you don't say Mammon Amat V'Savei Chol Ken, then that's why our Mishnah says Yishava. It's not Mammon Amat V'Savei Chol Ken if it's Bari B'Bari. Ela l'Rabba Bar Avuna de Amar in Amar Sumchus Afilu Bari B'Bari Amar Yishava Mocher Yachloku Mibayle. If Sumchus' din really applied by a case of Bari B'Bari, then the case of the claim of Gadol versus Katan should have been a case of Yachloku and not Yishava. So says the Gemara, and this is going to be a little bit of a cliffhanger because we're not really going to explain it. The Gemara is going to explain on Yamad Beis on Shabbos. As we'll soon see on the next page, that when we're dealing with the din deoraisa, a categorical shvua deoraisa, we don't employ the rules of Mammon Amutal B'Safek Cholken. We'll stop right here. Mirza Hashem will pick up on Shabbos, 6 lines from the bottom of the page on Kufim and Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night.